Hello everyone, this is Dr. Rosa Rahaimer. Today we are going to talk about some fundamental stuff about HTML. At the end of this lecture, you should be able to describe the nature and purpose of a markup language, identify the key component of HTML markup, describe the main sections of a standard HTML document, explain HTML nesting and formatting conventions. You should be able to install a development tool like Visual Studio Code and use it. And also, you will be able to create basic HTML pages. Markup languages. HTML and a number of similar languages are descriptive. What does it mean? It means that they say what something is or how it should be represented. Languages that describe what to do or how to work are called imperative languages. Descriptive languages usually contain textual content. Each component of the text is marked up or labeled to denote what it is. HTML, XML, and Markdown are some other examples of Markdown languages. This kind of codes usually interpreted and rendered on a screen or to a printed page. In this class, we will learn HTML and CSS. HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. HTML is a tag-based markup language. That means we have some text surrounded by some tags. Tags denote the beginning and end of a portion of a document. Area in between is called the content. Here you see an element. The element type is P. This is the start tag and this is the end tag. Whatever you see in between is called the content of the element. We have some elements which cannot have any content by nature. Like we have a horizontal line element. A horizontal line cannot have any content. This kind of elements has only start tag. They don't have content, they don't have end tag. As you see, all tags start with the less than sign, then a phrase which shows the tag type, which shows the element type, and a closing and a greater than sign character. A closing tag starts with a less than sign and a slash, the tag name, and a greater than sign. Elements can be nested inside one another. Here in this example, you see a body element. The content of the body element is from here to here. In the content, as you see, we have another element, the element P. And this is the content of the element P. If you look carefully, you can notice that in the content section of the element P, we have two I elements. This is one of them, and this is another one. The nesting actually creates a structure like a hierarchy or a tree structure. You see here in this code, we have body element. The body element has an element which is P, and the P element has two other elements. In programming, body is the parent of the P element in this structure, or it is called the father of the P element. And P element is a child of the body element. The P element itself has two children, this one and this one, children. I elements don't have any children. In this class, to create a web page, we use Visual Studio Code. Visual Studio Code is a development tool developed by Microsoft. It's a free tool and you can install it on Windows, Unix, or Mac systems. Let's start with installing Visual Studio Code. Go to the google.com and search for Visual Studio Code. Microsoft has another development which is called Visual Studio. Visual Studio Code is different from Visual Studio, so make sure that you are looking for Visual Studio Code. Here you can find the package for downloading Visual Studio Code in this address, code.visualstudio.com. But it may differ in the future, so always use Google to find Visual Studio Code. Click on the download link, and here you can see different packages for different operating systems. Choose your platform. In my case, it's Windows, so I click on this. It is started to be downloaded. After downloading, you can double click on the file. In Windows, I'm sure you know how to install an application, so we are not going to detail of how to install an application on Unix or Mac. Just agree with what it says and press some next. Visual Studio is a lightweight application, so it doesn't take too much time to install Visual Studio. Now we launch the application. Depending on the version, you may see different stuff. Sometimes it gives you some prompt about the latest news, release notation, and stuff like that. You can just simply close all of them. Then go to the File menu and choose Open Folder. Here I create a new folder, named it S1, and then I select this folder and then press the Select Folder button. In the Visual Studio Code, this is the main menu bar, and here you can see different tabs. The first tab is corresponding to the Explorer panel, which allows you to manage the content of your project. This one allows you to search among the project. This is for source controlling, like you can sync your project with GitHub or similar application. And this allows you to run your project for application that has compiler. And this is important one, extensions. you should go to here and type live preview. This one. I already installed this extension. If it's not installed, you can choose install application to install live preview. Why do we do this? Because we want to see the live preview of our code when we are coding, when we do any change, when we apply any change on our code. This extension allows us to see the effect of our change immediately inside Visual Studio Code. This area actually allows you to edit your code. I close this tab, and in the Explorer, I come to the folder name. You should see some icons here. This one allows you to create a new file. So I click on this, and now I need to choose a name for my file. All HTML files extension must be HTML. So we choose a name for our file. I name it 1. Then I press dot and type HTML. Try to use meaningful names for your page. 1.html is not too much meaningful, but since I'm a little bit lazy, I just use a very short name. Okay. Now let's create our first web page. The first line of our web page must be this statement. A less than sign character, exclamation mark, doc type, space, HTML, a greater than sign character. This means I am going to use HTML5 standard in this page. HTML has different standard, different versions. The latest one is HTML5. So when you see this, that means that that page contains HTML5 tags, and it follows HTML5 rules. After this, in the second line, we always type HTML. As you see, this HTML is an element. Each web page, each HTML web page must be defined inside an HTML element. Each tag may have some attributes. Length equal en. In fact, all elements have some attributes with some default values. If you want to change the default value, you need to clearly specify them. If you don't specify them, browsers will consider their default value. One of the attributes of HTML element is lang, which is used to specify the language of the page. En stands for English in ISO 639 standard. You can see different abbreviation for different languages. For example, for French, the abbreviation is FR. For English, the abbreviation is EN. For Spanish, the abbreviation is ES, and so on and so forth. Why do we do this? Actually, this helps search engines to index our web page better. Also, it allows assistant tools to give a better presentation of our web page to people who are in need. Each HTML element should have two sections, a head section and a body section. A head section is defined by a head element and a body section is defined by a body element. In the head section, we define the configuration and setting of our page. In the body, we define the content of our page. So heading is like a configuration section and the body is like a content section. Okay, in the head section, we usually have a meta element with this value. You don't need to know the philosophy behind this, but it's good to know. Here we said that the encoding, the character encoding of this page is based on UTF-8 standard. This allows browsers to correctly interpret the content of our page and allows us to show different characters from different languages. It allows us to show some special symbols. Also in the head section, we usually have a title element. Title element is used to define the title of our page in the browser. So whatever you type here will not be shown inside the web page. And inside the body, you can type whatever you want to show. This is my first page. Okay, let's see how we can preview this page. So you just need to go to the Explorer, right click on this file that you want to preview, and from the menu choose show preview. If you don't see this option, that means that you haven't installed the live preview extension. If you haven't seen this option, go to this extension section, search for live preview and install it. Okay. Now, whatever you do here, you can see its effect in the preview section. Okay. You can also save the file and go to the folder which this file is saved. I right click on this and choose Reveal in File Explorer. So I saved this file here and I can see the file 1.html. By default, Windows and many other operating systems don't show the extension of the known file types. So you may see something like this. But I always prefer to see the extension of the file, so I click on this and now I can see the extension of the file. Click on the file, double click on the file will be opened in your default web browser. Okay. I typed this. I made a mistake here. Now you can see the title of the page is my page title. And if I refresh this page, now you can see whatever we type in the title element is shown here. Okay, one more time. Whenever you want to create a new project from scratch, a new website from scratch, you go to the File menu of your Visual Studio Code. Then you should choose Open Folder. Then you need to select the folder that you want to store your data in that folder. I came here and then assume in this folder I want to create a new folder like S1 and store my file inside this folder. So I should select this folder. Now to create a new file, I can come to the Explorer pane and then I should move my mouse over this line which shows the name of the folder, and here you see some icons. The first one, which is this one, is used to create a new file. You click on it, then you should choose a name for your file. The extension of the file must be HTML. Visual Studio provides a way to type template or whatever you want in a very simple and easy way. But for the first few times, try to type everything yourself. Don't use it. For example, if you do this, Visual Studio shows the template and you can create the page immediately, but don't do this at the beginning. Type the template yourself. As I said, in the first line, we should type less than sign, exclamation mark, doc type, space, HTML greater than sign. This means that this page will follow the HTML5 standard, and whatever we write is related to, must be rendered as an HTML5 document. In the second line, we always add an HTML element. An HTML element starts with a start tag and ends with a end tag. Each HTML element should have two sections: a head section and a body section. As you see, the head section is defined by a head element, and the body section is defined by a body element. Also, it's good to add the language of our page in the HTML element. So we go to the start tag, add space after the tag name, and type the attribute which specifies the language of the page. And the attribute is lang. So lang equal, and inside double quote we type our value. EN stands for English. Okay. In the head section, we should add a meta tag with charset attribute, which its value is UTF-8. Here we define the character encoding of our page. Then in our template, we should have a title element, which specifies the title of our page. Okay, and in the body, we add whatever we want to show to our users. Okay, so whenever you create a new page, you need to type all these codes. Later, we will add some more stuff to this template. But at the beginning, for a few next sessions, we always create our page with this template. Okay, it's good to see some formatting conventions. Conventions are the rules for programmers. If you don't follow them, your code will be rendered and execute perfectly fine. We follow conventions because we want to make our code more readable. We want to make our code more maintainable. We want to let our colleagues to read our code much easier, and also we want to make it easier for ourselves to modify our code in the future. Some of the conventions are: the content of a long element should be indented. In our Visual Studio Code, this is the content of the HTML element, so it's too much. That's why we add an indentation to this content. As you see here, we add a tab for our content. We may add a tab to a space, more space, something like this. Opening and closing tags are aligned vertically for the element with long content. As you see here, this is the opening tag and this is the closing tag. Probably you notice that sometimes I say opening tag and closing tag. Those are the equivalent term to start tag and end tag. So opening tag, closing tag, start tag, end tag. Those are the same. Here, the opening tag and closing tag of the element are vertically aligned. The same is true here. The content of this one is not too much, so we type them in one line. And this element actually cannot have any content, so you don't see content or closing tag for meta elements. We said that short single line elements don't need to have their opening and closing tags on separate lines like the title tag. For nested tags, continue to increase the indent level. As you see here, the content of the HTML tag starts from here and ends from here, so we indented them one time. And the body tag itself contains this stuff. Again, we add an indentation relative to this element, to its parent. And here, this text is the content of the p tag, so we indent it relative to its container, which is the p tag. Okay, let's talk about some basic elements that you can see in you can add to your web page. So far, we learned p tags. P tags or p element are used to specify a paragraph. And paragraph means several sentences which convey a robust meaning in English or in other languages. So this is a sample text. We are going to learn some basic HTML tags. Okay, let's preview this page. So in the Explorer, I right click on the file name, and from the menu I choose show preview. So here I can see the preview of my code. Okay, everything looks good. The next tag that we are going to learn is h1 tag. h1 tag is used to define a heading, the most important heading. The most important heading. As you see, when it's rendered on a page, it is shown with a big font, with bold font, and h2 tags are also used to specify a heading, but the secondary important heading, not the most important heading. The secondary heading. As you see in the presentation, the font by default is the font of this element by default is smaller than the font of h1 element. Similarly, we have h3 tags. We have h4 tags. We have h5 tags. And we have h6 tags. The importance of these headings are decreased from h1 to h6. Actually, h6 is the most useless tags in HTML, and I haven't seen anyone use it, but there is such an option. As you see, this heading is smaller than the normal text, so it doesn't have too much meaning. We usually use h1, h2, and h3, sometimes rarely h4. I haven't seen actually anyone use h5 and h6. In this class, we store our page in a folder. But if you want to publish your web page on the internet, in fact, you need a web server. A web server is a software which is installed on a computer who has a valid IP address. The famous web servers are Apache and IIS. The task of web servers are managing your codes, receiving requests from the internet, and sending response to the requests. Assume you have a web server and you have configured the web server to manage your website. If users want to access to your website, they need to open a browser, type the address of your web server in their browser. The browser gets your request and make an HTTP request. The request will be sent over the internet and finally receives to your web server. In the web server reads the file related to the request and does either of two things. It may just read the content of the file, pack it, and send it back to the web browser via the internet. Or the web server may execute the content of the corresponding file and pack the result of the execution and send it to the server. In both cases, whatever the web server will send to users will be some HTML code. The browsers get the HTML code and render the content and show the appropriate content to our users. In this class, we will create only HTML files, HTML pages. So in case a user requests an HTML page from the web server only read the content of the page and send it back to the web browser. In fact, we have two types of web pages: static web pages and dynamic web pages. Static web pages are web pages that always show the same thing to users. HTML files actually create static web pages. If you visit a static page several times, you always get the same result. The second type of the web pages are called dynamic web pages. In this kind of web page, at least part of the page is generated when the user wants to see the page. If you visit a dynamic page several times, you may get different results. You learn the nature and purpose of a markup language, key component of HTML markup, the main section of a standard HTML document, HTML formatting conventions, and that's it. Have a nice day. Hope you enjoyed the lecture.